Good morning students. Myself Prema. Welcome students. Students, today we are going to study the third chapter Exogenetic Process Part 1 of Geography. Now students, in this chapter we are going to study the changes that are occurring in the exterior part of the earth. Now already students, in the second chapter we have studied about the endogenetic movement, that is changes that are occurring in the interior part of the earth. So in this we are going to study the changes that in this third chapter we are going to study the changes that are occurring in the exterior part of the earth. Many landforms are formed due to the internal movements. Now many processes occurring on the earth's surface also leads to the formation of or degradation of landforms continuously. So in this lesson we will be studying the exogenetic processes and the landforms formed by them. Now here internal movements means students, already we have studied about earthquake and volcano. Now we have studied about earthquake and volcano. Now those movements are occurring in the interior part of the earth. So it means changes are taking place in the interior part of the earth. So earthquake and volcanic eruptions takes place inside the interior part of the earth. But the destructions, no, they are seen outside. So as we have studied about earthquake and volcanic, so their changes takes place inside, means it changes are taking place inside, some reactions are taking place, some energies are generated, and when these energy students they come out, we have seen the changes outside. For example, volcanic eruptions, when volcanic eruptions take place, lavas come out. In the external process, so changes takes place on the earth surface. So it may be because of solar energy or gravitational forces and kinetic energy that is generated with the moving objects on the earth's surface. Here we can take the example of wind erosion. Now here erosions takes place because of the wind, and this is taking place on the earth's surface when the wind is blowing fast. So erosions, the materials are eroded. Now we can also take another example of river. When river flows along with water, so river not only water but it is also going to carry the sediments, sands and mud. So here river on the earth surface, so it is an exogenetic process. Now next we will study here, do you know? Now landforms formed on the earth's surface as a result of internal movements are called primary and secondary landforms. For example, continents, mountains, plateaus, plains, etc. Now students, already we have studied about earthquake, volcanoes. So the landforms that are formed because of that, they are all the examples of internal movements. That is, we have studied about how the fold mountains and block mountains have been formed. Same way we have studied about how Deccan Plateau has been formed because of volcanic eruptions. So students, primary and secondary landforms are formed because of earthquake and volcanoes. So in the same way here plateaus or mountains, they may be formed. And when now these mountains and plateaus will undergo changes because of rainfall and temperatures. So when these new landforms are eroded, they are called as tertiary landforms. So here because of external process like weathering, erosion, transportation and deposition, the primary and secondary landforms give way to the tertiary landforms. For example, valleys, sand dunes, delta, U-shaped valleys, etc. Same that I have explained. No, the changes that are taking place on the mountains or in the plateaus, that is that changes may take place because of rainfall, because of the high temperatures, the rocks may be eroded, the mountainous rocks they may be eroded and all, so the landform will be changed. So that changes, so when new landforms are created, they are called as tertiary landforms. So in your book examples are given, values about sand dunes किसको बोलते हैं, रेत का टीला रहता है, deltas, U-shaped valleys, etc. they are formed. So some pictures are shown in your books also. You can go through that. Next students, we are going to study about weathering. So breaking or weakening of rocks is a natural phenomena. It is called as weathering. Now this breaking or weakening of rocks is a natural phenomena, means we are not breaking with hammer, हम उसको हथौड़े से नहीं तोड़ते, but naturally it and this process it is not occurring in one day students, but it is taking a lots of year. So we are going to study about weathering can be of three types, that is mechanical weathering, chemical weathering and biological weathering. Now in arid climates, mechanical weathering is more dominant. So in arid climates where the temperature is very much high throughout the year, so where the mostly in the desert area. So in the desert area where the temperature is high, cracks are taking place. It means day by day as the heat is going to increase, so after many years, what will happen? Cracks will be seen, and these cracks are going to expand and they are going to break. That is disintegrate separate. For example, from a big rock, small rocks can be seen. जो बड़ा पत्थर होता है वो टूट टूट के बड़े बड़े रॉक्स होते हैं, टूट टूट के छोटे छोटे उसके पीसेस हो जाते हैं. नेक्स्ट इज about humid climate. So in the humid climate, chemical weathering is taking place. So humid climate mostly we can find near the sea coast. So in the humid climate, what happens? There will be presence of more amount of moisture. And in the biological weathering, it is occurs because of living organism. So here, so in biological weathering, so mostly we can see in the trees or because of the rats and ants, they are taking place. So students, here we have studied about what do we mean by weathering, that is breaking or weakening of rocks into small pieces, that is called as weathering. And we have studied about the three types of weathering, that is mechanical weathering, chemical weathering and biological weathering. So three types of weathering we have studied. So about the detail we are going to study. Now students, first we are going to study about mechanical weathering. Now in your textbook one example is given. Take an onion, cut it in the middle, observe the cut parts, try to remove each skin of layer of these parts. Now बुक में क्या बोला है, एक ओनियन को लो, उसको मिडिल से कट करो और उसके बाद में पार्ट्स कट करने के बाद क्या है, उसके एक एक लेयर्स को रिमूव करते जाओ. So you will notice that students, just as we can remove each and every outer layer of the onion, similarly in nature rocks undergo such a process. So what is told, in the same way, जैसे हम ओनियन को निकालो उसके एक एक लेयर्स निकलते जा रहे, सेम वे ये वी कैन सी the layers of the rocks also they are removing. The full portion of the rocks gets heated, but the outer portion, because they are getting more heat, that is the exposed part of the rocks heat most while the inner part is comparatively cooler. So as a result the outer layer of the rocks fall apart from the main part. तो यहाँ पे क्या बोला गया है, the rocks when they are getting the heat, the so at that time the full portion of the rocks they are getting the heated, but the outer portion जो उसका बाहर का portion है they are getting more heat as compared to the inner part. So inner part कैसा है, comparatively they are cool as compared to the outer part. So as a result what happened, the outer layer जो उसका बाहर का portion layer of the rocks they are falling apart, अलग हो जाता है from the main rocks. So this is called exfoliation of the rocks, means day by day that is the process, it is going to कंटिन्यू. उस रॉक्स के क्या हो गए, छोटे 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 करके पीसेस होते जाएंगे, वो सेपरेट होते जाएगा. So next we are going to study about mechanical weathering mainly occurs because of the following reasons. So here students we are going to study about the reasons why it is occurring. So the first reason is because of the temperature, second will be frost, third is crystal growth, fourth one is release of pressure, and the next one is water. So we will be studying about these reasons in detail one by one, how mechanical weathering it is taking place because of all these five reasons. So in detail we will be studying that. Here students, this is the picture of exfoliation process that we have studied. Onions के जैसे layers निकलते हैं ना, same here in this picture it is shown how the layers of the rock. So here it is the big rock. So here we can see the lines, you can see that is the layers are formed. So because of the heat what happens, these layers, the rocks they are going to break into pieces, layer by layers, that layers are going to be removed, separated from the main rock. So first we are going to study about temperature. Now the minerals in the rocks expand because of the heat and contract मतलब shrink when the temperature decreases. So due to such continuous contracting and expanding, tension develops in the rock particles. So each minerals reacts differently to the temperatures. So here students, what is told now, we have studied about that. Students, we all know rocks are made up of different types of minerals. Different minerals are present in the rocks, and these different minerals, they are having their different characteristics, their own features they are having. So some minerals, they react with water as some may react with heat. So when these rocks, no students, they are exposed to the heat or water, so some of the minerals, they are reacting with the, that they may react, some of the minerals they may react with water, some of them they may react with the heat, and this reaction may be different because each and every minerals, they are reacting in a different way. So some minerals expands more while others do not expand as much. So consequently the tension formed in the rocks also increases and decreases. So as a result, cracks develops in the rock when they break. So in areas where the diurnal means, yeah, day temperature throughout the year, the range of temperature is higher. Weathering of this type of is very common in the hot desert area. So this contraction and expansion process, no students, continuously it is going to take place. So and because of this continuous process, the particles of the rocks, no, they becomes loose and cracks are formed. So this type means, this type of weathering mostly where we can find in the hot desert areas where the day temperature is, that is the day temperature throughout the year, it is very much high. So in desert areas we can see this weathering. Next we are going to study about frost. Now you know that the volume of the water increases when it freezes. So in areas where the temperature drops below 0 degrees Celsius for quite some time, the water accumulated in the cracks or crevices, that is the holes in the rocks, they are getting freezed and its volume increases. This leads to tension in the rocks and they are shattered. Shattered means break. So here just students, just we can take the example. One example, if we are taking a bottle and full of water, and afterwards that bottle we are putting into the freezer, and afterwards after 2 3 days when we are going to take out the bottle, it is going to burst. Now why it is happening? Because when we are freezing the water, the volume of the water, it is going to increase, and because of the increased volume, the bottle is not able to bear that, and it is going to burst. Same thing here, it is told that it is happening with the rocks. So where the temperature, it is going to fall below 0 degrees Celsius. So here the water, they are getting collected in the rocks, and afterwards they are getting freezed in the rocks. And when they are going to get freezed, so the volume of the water, it is going to increase. And as a result, tension is created in the rocks and they are going to shatter. That is, the rocks, they are going to break. Next, we are going to study about crystal growth. Now, in the rocky coast, waves hit the sea cliff. Rocky coast means mostly in the coastal area. Sea coast के पास जो रहते हैं ना, बड़े बड़े sea cliffs means क्या होता है? Means the rocks that are near the sea coast, rocky coast. So the water is alkaline. Some water droplets hit the rocks, hit the cracks in the rocks, and in this alkaline water, the soluble materials in the rocks get dissolved, and this leads to the formation of small hole in the rocks, and this is the effect of the solution. So जो rocky coast होते हैं, तो वहाँ पे क्या होता है? As we know that already we have studied, minerals are present. The different types of minerals are present in the rocks. So some minerals, they are dissolving in the, they dissolve in the rocks, and as a result this leads to formation. उसकी वजह से क्या होता है? Small holes हो जाते हैं किसके अंदर? Rocks के अंदर. And this process, why it is taking, this is the effect of the solutions that are present, and alkaline water, they get stored in these holes. जो holes रहते हैं उसके अंदर alkaline waters, they are getting stored. Because of the heat, this water turns into water vapor and only crystals of alkaline materials remains in the rocks. So crystals occupy more space. This causes tension in the rocks. Holes are formed in the rocks. It looks like a honeycomb. So here students, we all know that what is present in the here in the sea water, salt are present. Now when salty water, they are accumulated in the holes, so they are getting collected in the holes, and afterwards when heat is going to be there, more it will be there. So this water, it is going to evaporate, and afterwards what is going to be left behind? Salt is going to be left behind. So crystals, so this, they occupy more space, and this causes tension in the rocks, and honeycomb is found here picture. So next we are going to study about release of pressure. Now it is not that tension is created in the rocks only because of temperature, freezing of water or crystallization. The outer layer of the rocks exert pressure on the inner or lower layers, And when this pressure ceases to exist, the lower or inner layers get freed from the pressure. So this also leads to weathering. So here students, what is told that only these reasons that we have studied, temperature, freezing of water or crystallization, these three are not responsible for weathering. But sometimes what happened, that is the outer layers of the rocks, they are exerting pressure on the inner layers of the rocks. जो बाहर का rock का portion है, they are exerting pressure on the inner, अंदर के parts के layers के ऊपर, they are exerting the pressures. And when this pressure it is going to continue, so the inner layers, they are getting freed from this pressure, they try to get free from this pressure. So that is also leading to weathering. Now next we are going to study about water. Now some areas experiences more rainfall than others. In such areas, soaking of rock water also causes weathering of some rocks like sandstone, conglomerate, etc. Now some areas, क्या बोला, some areas they are receiving more rainfall than the other areas. तो वहाँ पे soaking of जो rocks रहते हैं water they are soaking. So they also, it is also causing weathering of some rocks like sandstones, pebbles वगैरह के जो रहते हैं, conglomerate, that is mixture of different rocks. These rocks are formed because of the pressure on the agglomeration of the sand particles. Agglomeration का meaning होता है collection, जैसे mass, बहुत सारा collection of the sand particles. Mud also makes sand particles come together. उसमें किसका mixer हो जाता है, that is mud, मिट्टी भी मिल जाती है. When water penetrates such rocks, the particles get loose and separate from the main rock. So when what happens, when water it is penetrating, they are going inside such rocks. So उसके जो particles रहते हैं, they are getting loose and they are separating from the main rock, and that is called as granular weathering. So here see, you can see here picture is given of the granular weathering. Sometimes both temperature and water are responsible for weathering. Both the reasons are responsible for weathering. Difference in temperature causes contraction and expansion, widening the joints or the cracks in the rocks. Water accumulates in such wide joints and big blocks of rock separate from each other. This is called block disintegration. So what is told now, see, difference in the temperature, that is when the temperature is will be very high, so at that time the rocks they are going to expand, and the when temperature when it is going to, they are going to contract. So when this process will be going on, so what, the joints will be created in the rocks, and in these cracks water it is going to be collected in such wide joints, they are going to accumulate, and big blocks of rocks they separate from each other. So when these big blocks of rocks they separate from each other, this is called as block disintegration. So that process is called as block disintegration. Here students, we are going to study now chemical weathering. Now students, here two pictures are there, two images are there. Now in the first image we can see we have taken a glass of water, and in that we have put a piece of chalk in it. So in that what will happen, what changes we can see, we are the chalk it is going to dissolve in water, and the chemical reaction will be seen here. Now in the next image here, what is there, we are taking some iron nails. Some iron nails are taken in a wet cloth, and afterwards means that the iron nails, no, we are wrapping in the wet cloth, and after 2 days we are going to open it, and afterwards what we are going to see, so in that cloth we will be seeing that some stains will be there, जैसे rust हो जाएगा, उसको जंग ले जाएगा, that changes we can. Now water plays an important role in the chemical weathering. So what is playing very important role? Water. Rock is a mixture of many minerals that we have studied. In the rocks different types of minerals are present. Water is an universal solvent. Many things get dissolved easily in water. Why water is called as universal solvent? Because many things they can dissolve in water. And the solubility increases because the matter has dissolved in the water. Now, and those minerals which do not dissolve easily in water get dissolved in such solutions. So that materials that are not easily dissolved in water, so they are getting dissolved in such types of solutions. Now in areas that receive heavy rainfall, chemical weathering occurs in the following way. So what is told that most here chemical weathering it is taking place in the areas mostly with that are receiving heavy rainfall. So here first is carbonation. Carbonation, the rainwater travels through the atmosphere before reaching the ground. That is, before coming to the ground, the rainwater to the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide in the air they gets mixed in the water in this process. and dilute carbonic acid gets formed. So carbon dioxide which is present in the air, they are getting mixed in the water during that, and what is carbonic acid, they are formed. So materials like limestone get easily dissolved in such acid. So diluted carbonic in that limestone get easily dissolved. So because of that, example, water plus carbon dioxide, what is formed? Carbonic acid, that is H2O plus CO2 is equal to H2CO3. Now we will be studying about solution. So that is all the form of chemical weathering. Some minerals in the rocks get dissolved in water. That the rock minerals that are present in the rock. So in that some of the minerals they are getting dissolved in water. Now limestone is formed due to the chemical precipitation between the water and alkalis. Here precipitation means it may be in the form of snowfall, hailstones, that are the forms of precipitation. So that is at Vadga Darya in Ahmednagar district, limestones it gets precipitated chemically. That is, it is undergoes chemical weathering again. Similarly, because of solution, alkalis in the rocks dissolves and make them brittle. Brittle means breakdown. So here you can see the picture. Here a picture is shown of the cell, that is the stellarites in Vadgaon Darya of Ahmednagar. It is shown here how the chemical weathering process it is taking place. So here this image it is showing the chemical weathering. Next is oxidation. Now this process occurs in rocks which have iron present in them. So किसमें होता है? जिसमें जोन से रॉक जिस रॉक्स में आयन प्रेजेंट होते हैं. The iron in the rock comes in contact with water and chemical reactions takes place between iron and oxygen. Hence a reddish colored layer forms on the rocks. This is called as a rust. जैसे कि ऑलरेडी अभी हम लोग ने पढ़ा था आयन नेल्स के बारे में, तो उसे वेट क्लॉथ में रखा तो क्या फॉर्म हुआ था? रस्ट. When you kept nails in the wet cloth, you must have noticed a similar thing. So similar process occurs in rocks in areas with high rainfall. तो ये कहाँ पे होता है ऐसा process? In areas which is receiving high rainfall. Now there are many more processes involved in chemical weathering besides the one mentioned above. For example, here some examples are given. Daily life examples include moistening of the table salt in the rainy season. Rainy season में जो salt रहता है हमारा जो हम खाते हैं, so क्या होता है? मॉइशन उसमें मॉइस्चर जमा हो जाता है. एप्पल स्लाइसेस टर्निंग ब्राउन. एप्पल स्लाइसेस विच आर देयर, अगर हम उसको कट करके रख देंगे तो क्या हो जाएगा? आफ्टर सम टाइम्स व्हेन वी आर गोइंग टू सी, so the color it is going to look brown. Next we are going to study about biological weathering. Now besides mechanical and chemical weathering, biological factors are also responsible for weathering of rocks. Now students, till now we have studied about mechanical and chemical weathering. Now we will be studying about the biological factors, how they are responsible for the weathering of rocks. Now have you visited any fort? Have you seen trees growing on the minarets? अगर you must have visited fort में वहाँ पे देखा रहेगा तुम लोग ने, मीन्स वेरियस टाइप्स ऑफ ट्रीज, छोटे छोटे से ट्रीज वगैरह आ जाते हैं. यू मस्ट हैव सीन द ग्रोइंग द ट्रीज ऑन द मीनार्स. बड़े बड़े जो मीनार्स रहते हैं उसके ऊपर भी तुम लोग ने छोटे ऐसे झाड़ देखे होंगे, छोटे छोटे ट्रीज आ जाते हैं. यू मस्ट हैव सीन पीसेस ऑफ रॉक्स गेटिंग सेपरेटेड बिकॉज ऑफ द रूट्स ऑफ द ट्रीज. कुछ रॉक्स में क्या आ जाते हैं? ट्रीज आ जाते हैं, छोटे छोटे ट्रीज आ जाते हैं. बिकॉज ऑफ दैट प्रेशर व्हाट हैपेंस, द रॉक्स दे स्टार्ट सेपरेटिंग. As the roots grow bigger, they create tension in the rocks and they start breaking them. So as the roots they grow bigger, they create tension in the rocks and start breaking them. Now ants make large ant hills. Ants की वजह से तुम लोग ने देखा रहे हो क्या बनाते हैं उन लोग, तुम नोटिस किया रहेगा उन लोग ant hills बनाते हैं. Rats, mice, rabbits and other worms and insects makes burrows in the ground. These animals are called as burrowing animals, that you all in the lower class you have studied. Now because of their activity, weathering of rocks occurs. So because of all these things, because of the ants, rats, mice, rabbits, so what is taking place? Weathering of the rocks it is taking place. Now besides this, algae, moss, lichen, other flora etc. grow in the rocks. They all also help in the weathering. So here see lichen, biological weathering, how it is taking place. Here image is shown for you. So all these things they are responsible for the because of them biological weathering is taking place. Now next we are going to study about mass movements or mass wasting. The weathered rock materials start moving along the slopes due to the gravity and accumulate near the foothills or the gentle slopes. So जो भी weathered materials है, rock materials है, so they start moving downside towards the slopes because of the gravity they are coming down and they are gathering near the foothills or the gentle slopes. Now this process has been happening for years continuously, सालों साल चलते रहता है. The weathered particles form a conical heap at the foothills. So whatever the weathered particles are there, they are coming down and they are forming a conical heap. Conical shape में एक जमा हो जाते हो at the foothills. When weathered particles move down due to the gravity alone, the process is called as a mass movement. So when these weathered particles they are coming down because of the gravity, so that process is called as a mass movement. Now mass movements occur in two ways. It is a rapid on steeper slopes. Steeper मतलब जो slope straight होता है एकदम. And while it is slower on the gentle slopes. And while it is slow on the gentle slopes. Gentle मतलब जो थोड़ा that position means which is somewhat in slanting way. So mass movements two ways में होता है, that is rapid and slower. Next we are going to study about rapid mass movement. Now rock falls, landslides, land subsidence occur rapidly. Their effects are very destructive. So here images you can see. Rock falls, landslides and land subsidence they are occurring because of the rapid mass movements. और उसके जो effects होते हैं that is also very much destructive. The probability of these events is more in the regions having humid climates and steeper slopes. So इसकी probability means here possibility of these events is more in the regions having which type of climate, that is humid climate and slopes, and the slopes which are steeper. A thick layer of weathered materials forms on the slopes. So afterwards what happens, a thick layer of जो भी weathered materials जो भी होता है, so they are getting collected on the slope areas. Next we are going to study about slower mass movements. Now in areas with dry climates and gentle slopes, mass movements occur slowly. So जहाँ पे dry climate और gentle slopes होता है, mass movement it is taking very slowly. Soil creep is a common phenomena in such areas. In periglacial regions along the slopes, small layers of soil accumulates because of the movement of the soil. This is called as solifluction. Solifluction, see here, image is shown here. So in the periglacial means that area adjacent to the glacier regions. So in such areas, small layers of soils accumulates, and because of that movement of the soil, this is called as a solifluction. So that is about the slower mass movement. Now when it rains in such areas, the rainwater penetrates the weathered materials and their weight increases. So this thick layer of weathered materials that are formed on the slopes where they are getting collected. So at that time when it is going to rain in such areas, the rainwater क्या होते हैं, they are penetrating, they are getting inside the weathered materials, and because of that the weight of the material it is going to increase. The weathered materials move very rapidly and come down the slope. So afterwards these weathered materials they move very rapidly fastly and they come down the slope. जो side में उनको slope मिलेगा from that they are going to come down. So here example is given of the mudslide at Malin village of Pune district. Sometimes the weathered materials do not move downward but sink in Setu where they are. This is called as slumping. So here picture image is shown of the slumping, means sometimes what happens, this weathered material they are not going to come towards the downward, but where they are going to sink, they are only वहीं पे दब जाते हैं. Now last we will be studying about erosion. Now like weathering and mass movements, erosion is also an external process. Erosion occurs through various agents, that is wind, running water, glaciers, sea water and groundwater causes erosions. So they are also the external process. Because of that also here they are also causing erosion. Now students, hope you have understood this chapter. Now in this chapter students we have studied about the different forms of weathering, that is in the external process we have studied about the different form of weathering. Mechanical weathering we have studied, along with that we have studied about the chemical weathering. Biological weathering we have studied, along with that we have studied about the movements, that is the rapid mass movements and the slower mass movements. So hope you have understood this chapter. Now students, for the assignment from this chapter you will be having, that is first question will be what is mechanical weathering. So first question is what is mechanical weathering. Second is how does biological weathering occur. How does biological weathering occur? And the third one will be distinguish between weathering and mass wasting. Distinguish between weathering and mass wasting. So these are three are the assignments for you. Thank you.